Well, when Allyson Parsons was born profoundly deaf, her family faced the prospect of having to leave their home in rural South Australia and move to the city for specialist education. Instead, they turned to their local public school, from where a brilliant career was launched. Mike Sexton reports.
In a converted dairy on a property on South Australia's York Peninsula, Allyson Parsons spends her days doing what she loves.
I'm just fascinated by colour and light, and Australia has such an amazing light, and so I'd like to sort of paint that.
It would be simple to look at the work and conclude life is easy for this artist, but behind the success lies a story of the persistence and resilience of rural Australia. It began in the 1960s when a young couple, WOOLFORD and Mari Parsons, decided to build a farm.
There's huge tracts of salinity in this area. It's due to the type of soil and the clearing of the trees and shrubs that took the moisture before. I reckon it's about here that we took that photograph.
The Parsons threw themselves into their work, eventually planting more than 350,000 trees to reverse the creeping salinity and make the farm sustainable. Their effort was rewarded with, among other things, a National Land Care Award. But everything changed when their first child, Allyson, was born.
As she got to the stage where most kids start talking, we realised there was something wrong, but we didn't know what it was because she was still saying some words.
Allyson Parsons had been born profoundly deaf, but incredibly, as an infant, she began to lip read. She became so good at it that it was almost 4 years before specialists diagnosed her properly.
I can remember the day we were told that she would have to go to school for the deaf in Adelaide. I think we cried nearly all the way home with Ally between us. The dilemma was, do we sell the farm and move to the city, or does Mari and Allyson move to the city?
The nearest school to the Parsons property was at tiny Curramulka, where there were just 3 teachers. None of them had any experience with deaf children, but one, AUDREY Tucker, offered to try to teach Allyson.
I didn't consult with any principal, I must admit. I just said, yes, we'll give it a go, and it worked.
Got a star for that one, I know, you always used to give me nice stars.
And I don't really know what we would have done if it hadn't worked. You see, the G, you had to start at the right and go right round. You didn't take your pencil off. I had to be very careful always to face her when I spoke because she obviously lip read. She sometimes mispronounced words and swallowed the ends of them. Most kids, they used to...
AUDREY would send me home a list of words every night from school that she wasn't pronouncing correctly. And we would just go over and over and over. There'd be tears on both sides because it was very frustrating. But we'd persist until she got it right.
The persistence paid off, and instead of uprooting to the city, Allyson Parsons grew up at home, surrounded by her family and the beauty of the environment they'd created.
I'm so grateful that we had that chance to stay here. AUDREY Tucker, who was my teacher, was willing to try it and work with it. So everybody had an input.
From her silent world, Allyson Parsons keenly observed the nature around her, and in her final year of high school began painting what she saw. In the same way she'd confounded doctors by teaching herself to lip read, critics were stunned by the quality of her artwork, given that she had no formal training.
It's historical. Australians have always been fascinated with their country, from Von Gerard or Drysdale up to contemporary painters today, and Allyson sits there as a contributor to that dialogue, adding to her vision to the way we see our country.
Allyson Parsons' first art show was staged in the local Girl Guide Hall. Now she's mounting another exhibition in Adelaide that will, like all the others in between, likely sell out. The success has allowed her to stay on the land and raise her own family there.
I'd like to paint till I'm in my 90s if I make that. I just love it. I just love painting every day, and you just really live in the now. You get so immersed in it and you don't think about anything else.
Almost 40 years after it was suggested she leave the farm for the sake of her future, Allyson Parsons is still there, thanks to her extraordinary gifts and the guidance of others.
Oh, she's brilliant, and I wish I could claim that I taught her, but I didn't.
But there must be a certain amount of pride, I would suspect, that you felt.
Oh, yes. I have some reflected glory from Ally.
And what a glorious story from Mike Sexton.